The fine taped to my front door was for $500, and I stood there in my driveway at 6 in the morning holding my thermos of coffee, staring at it like it might suddenly combust into flames and disappear. I had just gotten home from a 3-day haul from Denver to Milwaukee, hauling refrigerated goods across state lines, and my body ached in places I did not know could ache. My tractor trailer sat in my driveway where it always did, gleaming white in the early morning sun of suburban Phoenix, Arizona. The truck was my livelihood, my business, my everything. I had spent the last 8 years building my owner-operator career from nothing, and now someone had decided it was a problem. The notice was printed on official-looking letterhead from the Saguaro Springs Homeowners Association. In bold letters across the top, it read, "Violation notice and fine." Below that, in smaller print, it detailed my supposed transgression. Unauthorized commercial vehicle storage in violation of Section 7.3 of the Community Guidelines. Below that, a handwritten note in purple ink. "This is your third warning. Payment due within 15 days or legal action will commence. Brenda." I crumpled the paper in my fist and looked at my truck. It was not some eyesore. I kept it clean, maintained it religiously, and parked it neatly in my own driveway. My property. The house I had bought 2 years ago with the money I saved from endless nights on the road. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my dispatcher asking if I could take a load to Albuquerque tomorrow morning. I typed back a quick confirmation and walked inside, tossing my duffel bag on the floor. The house was quiet and still, just me, as it had been since my divorce 3 years ago. I liked the quiet most days, but today it felt heavy. I showered, changed, and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, pulling up the community guidelines I had signed when I bought the house. I remembered the real estate agent, a peppy woman named Sandra, assuring me the HOA was super chill and barely active. That should have been my first red flag, but I was eager to get into a place of my own after years of apartment living and sleeping in truck stops. Section 7.3 was there, clear as day. No commercial vehicles over a certain weight limit, no storage of work equipment visible from the street, no business operations conducted from the property. I felt my jaw tighten. When I bought the house, I had specifically asked about parking my truck. Sandra had waved it off, saying half the neighborhood had work trucks and nobody cared. Apparently, someone cared now. I dialed the number listed on the violation notice. It rang 4 times before a woman answered, her voice sharp and clipped. "Saguaro Springs HOA, this is Brenda Patterson speaking." "Yeah, hi, this is Ethan Wagner from 4257 Desert Bloom Drive. I just got a violation notice about my truck." "Oh yes, Mr. Wagner." Her tone shifted, becoming almost gleeful. "We have been trying to reach you about this issue for quite some time. This is the first I am hearing about it. We sent 2 previous notices to your address, certified mail." I pulled up my tracking apps and email. Nothing. I never received anything. "That is not our problem, Mr. Wagner. The violations stand and the fine is due. That monstrosity you park in your driveway is a blight on our community, and several neighbors have complained." Monstrosity. My blood pressure spiked. "Madam, that truck is how I make my living. I am an owner-operator. I have a CDL, a DOT permit, the whole 9 yards. This is not some hobby." "I do not care if you have a license from the Pope himself," Brenda said. "The rules are the rules. Commercial vehicles are not permitted in residential driveways in this community. You can park it at a commercial lot like everyone else." "Everyone else? Who else in this neighborhood has a semi-truck?" "That is beside the point." "It is exactly the point. You are telling me I cannot park my work vehicle at my own home. Correct. And if you continue to violate the rules, we will be forced to place a lien on your property. The fine stands at $500 for the current violation, and it will be an additional $250 for every day you remain in non-compliance after the 15-day grace period. My hand gripped the phone so hard I thought the screen might crack. I need to see these previous notices you claim you sent. You can request copies at our monthly board meeting. Next one is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I am supposed to just pay this fine and move my truck with no chance to even see the evidence. Or you can contest it at the meeting. But the truck needs to be moved regardless. Have a blessed day, Mr. Wagner. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone, rage bubbling up from my chest. This was insane. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let some power-tripping HOA board member tell me I could not park my own truck at my own house. I spent the rest of the morning making calls. First to a lawyer friend from high school, Marcus, who now practiced in Scottsdale. He listened to my story and sighed. HOAs are brutal, man. They have a lot of power, more than people realize. But if you can prove you never got those first 2 notices, you might have a case. Also, there are some protections for commercial vehicles if they are part of your primary income. Arizona has some specific laws about that. So what do I do? Document everything. Take photos of your truck. Keep records of your income, your CDL, your DOT permits, everything. Show that this is not just a vehicle, it is your business. And definitely show up to that board meeting. These things can spiral fast if you ignore them. Next, I called my insurance company, my accountant, and even reached out to a truckers' advocacy group I was part of online. Everyone had the same advice. Document. Prove the truck was essential to my livelihood. Do not just roll over. I spent the afternoon taking photos of my truck from every angle, printing out my CDL, my DOT medical card, my operating authority, my tax returns showing my income. I built a folder thick enough to choke a horse. The next morning I took the Albuquerque load. It was a straightforward run, delivering auto parts to a warehouse off I-25. The drive gave me time to think, to cool down, to plan my approach. I was not going to let Brenda Patterson or anyone else take away what I had built. When I got back 2 days later, there was another notice on my door. This one was even more aggressive. Final warning in red letters. The fine had increased to $750. I took a photo of it and added it to my folder. That evening, my neighbor Tom knocked on my door. He was a retired firefighter, a good guy who sometimes watched my place when I was on long hauls. "Hey, Ethan, you doing okay? I saw that notice on your door." "Honestly, no. The HOA is trying to fine me for parking my truck here." Tom shook his head. "That is Brenda. She has been on a warpath lately. Got elected board president 6 months ago and has been making everyone's life hell. She tried to fine me for leaving my trash cans out an hour past pickup time." "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. She walks the neighborhood with a clipboard looking for violations. It is like she has nothing better to do. Did you fight it? Paid the $50. Was not worth the headache, but your situation is different. That truck is your job." "Exactly. I do not know what she expects me to do. I cannot afford to rent a commercial lot every time I am home. You know what I think it is?" Tom leaned against my doorframe. "She hates that you are never here. She has made comments about absentee owners, people who do not participate in neighborhood stuff. I think she sees your truck as a symbol of that. I am not absentee, I am working. I know that, you know that, but Brenda does not care. She wants a picture-perfect neighborhood where everyone shows up to block parties and volunteers for committees." I thanked Tom for the information and closed the door, adding his testimony to my mental notes. This was not just about the truck. This was personal. The 3 weeks until the board meeting felt like an eternity. I took shorter loads, staying closer to Phoenix so I could be home more. I did not move my truck from my driveway. Every day I came home, I half expected to find it booted or towed, but it stayed put. I used the time to do more research. I found Arizona Revised Statute Section 33-1809, which limited HOA authority over vehicles used for business purposes. I found case law from other states where owner-operators had successfully fought similar violations. I built my case like I was preparing for trial. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. I kept running through what I would say, how I would present my evidence, how I would stay calm in the face of what I knew would be hostility. The meeting was held in the community center, a bland beige building near the neighborhood entrance. I arrived 15 minutes early, my folder under my arm, wearing a button-down shirt and jeans. I wanted to look professional, but not like I was trying too hard. The room was set up with rows of folding chairs facing a long table where the board members sat. Brenda was easy to spot. She was in her mid-50s, with short blonde hair styled in that specific way that screamed, "Let me speak to your manager." She wore a bright pink blazer and had a stack of papers in front of her. There were 4 other board members, all looking varying degrees of bored or uncomfortable. A handful of other residents trickled in, most of them older, clutching their own folders and papers. Apparently, I was not the only one with grievances. Brenda called the meeting to order at exactly 7 p.m., rapping a gavel on the table like she was a judge. She went through the standard opening, reading minutes from the last meeting, discussing budget items. I tuned most of it out, my knee bouncing with nervous energy. Finally, she got to violations. We have several outstanding violations to address this evening. First up, Mr. Ethan Wagner of 4257 Desert Bloom Drive. I stood up, folder in hand, and walked to the front of the room. Every eye was on me. "Mr. Wagner, you have repeatedly violated Section 7.3 of our community guidelines by parking a commercial tractor trailer in your driveway. You have been fined accordingly, and yet the vehicle remains. What do you have to say for yourself? What did I have to say for myself?" Like I was a child being scolded. I have a lot to say, actually. I opened my folder and pulled out the first document. This is my commercial driver's license, issued by the state of Arizona. I am a certified Class A driver. Brenda waved her hand dismissively. "We are not questioning your qualifications, Mr. Wagner. We are questioning your disregard for community standards. Let me finish." My voice was firm but calm. "This truck is not a hobby. It is not a toy. It is how I make 100% of my income. I am an owner-operator, which means I own my truck and I contract directly with shippers. I have operated this business for 8 years. I laid out my DOT permits, my operating authority, my tax returns with the income circled in highlighter. This truck generates between $8,000 and $12,000 a month in gross revenue. It is my sole source of income. Forcing me to park it elsewhere would cost me approximately $400 a month in lot fees, not to mention the time and fuel costs of having to drive to and from a lot every time I have a job." One of the other board members, a man in his 60s with glasses, leaned forward. "That is all well and good, but the rules apply to everyone. Do they?" I pulled out a printed Google Maps screenshot of the neighborhood. "I took a drive around yesterday. There are 6 pickup trucks with company logos parked in driveways, 3 landscaping trailers, 2 plumbing vans. All commercial vehicles. Why am I being singled out?" Brenda's face reddened. "Those are different." "How? They are small commercial vehicles. Your truck is massive. It blocks the view, it is unsightly, and it lowers property values. You have any evidence that it lowers property values? Any appraisals, any complaints from actual neighbors? We have received multiple complaints. From who? Can you name them? Brenda shuffled her papers. That information is confidential, convenient. I pulled out another document. This is Arizona Revised Statute Section 33-1809. It specifically limits HOA authority over vehicles that are used for the owner's primary business. My truck qualifies. By law, you cannot prohibit me from parking it here. The lawyer on the board, a woman in her 40s named Susan, took the paper from me and read it. Her expression shifted. She whispered something to Brenda, who scowled. "We will need to have our attorney review this," Susan said carefully. "Great. In the meantime, I am requesting that all fines be waived and that I be allowed to continue parking my truck in my driveway, as is my legal right." Brenda stood up, her face now fully flushed with anger. "You do not get to come in here and tell us what to do. This board was elected to maintain the standards of this community, and we will not be bullied by someone who thinks the rules do not apply to them. I am not asking for special treatment. I am asking to be treated fairly. You have not enforced this rule against anyone else. You sent me fines without proper notice, and you are violating state law. We sent you certified letters. Show me the receipts. Show me proof that I received them." Brenda sputtered. Susan whispered to her again. The room was silent, everyone watching the showdown. Finally, Susan spoke. "Mr. Wagner, we will table this issue until our next meeting pending legal review. In the meantime, you may continue parking your vehicle in your driveway." Brenda looked like she wanted to argue, but Susan shot her a look that could melt steel. I nodded, gathered my papers, and walked back to my seat. My hands were shaking, but I felt a surge of victory. The meeting continued for another hour. Other residents presenting their cases, most of them minor disputes about lawn care or paint colors. I stayed until the end, then walked out into the cool desert night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. But I knew this was not over. Brenda was not the type to back down easily. Over the next week, I kept a low profile. I took a load to Las Vegas and back, then another to Tucson. My truck stayed in my driveway, and no new fines appeared. I started to think maybe the legal threat had been enough to scare them off. I should have known better. 2 weeks after the meeting, I got a call from my bank. There was a hold on my account. A lien had been filed against my property by the Saguaro Springs HOA for unpaid fines totaling $1,200. I drove straight to the bank, then to the county recorder's office. Sure enough, there it was. A lien filed 3 days ago. I called Marcus immediately. "They cannot do that," he said after I explained. "Not without proper notice, not without giving you a chance to contest. And definitely not after the board said they would table the issue." So what do? We file an emergency motion to remove the lien, and we sue them for harassment and violation of state law. This just went from a nuisance to a serious legal issue. Marcus drafted the paperwork that afternoon. We filed it the next morning. The hearing was set for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, I could not access a significant portion of my savings. The lien had frozen my ability to refinance or sell my house. I was effectively trapped. I kept working, kept driving, kept documenting everything. I also started asking around the neighborhood more. Tom introduced me to other residents who had issues with Brenda. A retired teacher named Gloria who had been fined for having the wrong color mailbox. A young couple, Jake and Maria, who had been cited for parking their car on the street overnight during a family visit. A widower named Carl who had been threatened with fines for letting his grass grow a 1/4 inch too long while he was recovering from surgery. A pattern emerged. Brenda had been targeting people she deemed undesirable or non-compliant. People who did not show up to her meetings, who did not volunteer for her committees, who did not fit her vision of the perfect neighborhood. I started organizing. I created a group chat with everyone who had been unfairly targeted. We shared stories, compared notes, built a case not just against my fine but against Brenda's entire reign of terror. By the time the hearing arrived, we had a dozen residents ready to testify. Marcus had a stack of evidence 3 inches thick. We walked into that courtroom ready for war. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Caroline Martinez. She reviewed the filings, listened to Marcus's opening statement, then turned to the HOA's lawyer, a young guy in an expensive suit who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. "Counselor, explain to me how your client filed a lien without providing proper notice or allowing Mr. Wagner to exhaust his administrative remedies." The lawyer stammered through an explanation about the fines being valid and the lien being standard procedure. Judge Martinez was not buying it. Mr. Wagner provided evidence that he never received the initial certified notices. He presented a legal statute that arguably protects his right to park his vehicle. Your client tabled the issue pending legal review, then filed a lien anyway. Does that sound like proper procedure to you? Your Honor, the HOA has broad authority to enforce its covenants. Not when it violates state law, Counselor. Not when it acts in bad faith. The hearing lasted 2 hours. Marcus presented our evidence, including testimony from other residents about Brenda's pattern of harassment. I testified about the impact on my business and my life. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue that the rules were clear and I had knowingly violated them, but it fell flat. Judge Martinez ruled from the bench. The lien was removed immediately. All fines against me were voided. And she ordered the HOA to pay my legal fees and compensate me for the bank holds and financial disruption. But she did not stop there. I am deeply troubled by the pattern of behavior described here today. Homeowners associations serve an important function, but they are not dictatorships. Mr. Wagner has a legal right under Arizona law to park his commercial vehicle at his residence when it is his primary source of income. Any further attempts to fine or penalize him for this will result in sanctions against the HOA and its board members personally. Brenda, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom, stood up and stormed out. I watched her go, feeling vindicated but also wary. People like Brenda did not just disappear. Over the next month, things were quiet. I got a check from the HOA for my legal fees, along with a terse letter saying the matter was resolved. I went back to work, taking loads across the Southwest, my truck parked proudly in my driveway whenever I was home. But the other residents in my group chat were not done. They wanted change. They wanted Brenda gone. We organized a recall petition. Arizona law allowed for HOA board members to be removed by a vote of the homeowners. We needed signatures from 20% of the homes to trigger a recall election. We got 35% in 2 weeks. Brenda fought it every step of the way. She sent out angry emails accusing us of trying to destroy the community. She held emergency meetings where she ranted about ungrateful residents. She even tried to file counter violations against people who had signed the petition, but it was too late. The recall election was scheduled for a Saturday in June. We campaigned hard, knocking on doors, explaining what had happened, showing people the receipts of Brenda's abuses of power. On election day, the turnout was the highest the community had seen in years. People who had never attended a meeting showed up to vote. When the ballots were counted, Brenda was removed by a margin of 72%. She did not take it well. She stood up during the announcement and screamed at the room, calling us all ungrateful and stupid, saying we would regret this. Security had to escort her out. The new board was elected 2 weeks later. Tom ran and won a seat. So did Gloria and Jake. They immediately set about reforming the bylaws, making enforcement more transparent, and creating an appeals process for violations. One of their first acts was to formally recognize vehicles used for business purposes as exempt from the commercial vehicle restrictions. My truck was grandfathered in, along with the landscaping trailers and plumbing vans and everything else. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But 3 months later, I got a call from Tom. He sounded shaken. "Ethan, you need to come to the community center. Now. What is going on? Just come. You need to see this." I drove over, my stomach knotted with dread. When I arrived, there were police cars in the parking lot. Tom met me at the door, his face pale. They found something. When the new board took over, we started going through the HOA's financial records. Brenda had been the treasurer for the past 5 years before she became president. Ethan, she embezzled over $200,000. I stood there, stunned. What? She had been funneling money into fake vendor accounts, paying herself for services that were never rendered, inflating costs on community projects and pocketing the difference. It goes back years. Inside, 2 detectives were sitting with the new board members reviewing stacks of financial documents. One of them looked up as I entered. "You are Ethan Wagner." "Yeah. You are the one who fought the lien, right? Your lawsuit is what prompted the recall." "I guess so." The detective nodded. "You might have just uncovered one of the bigger HOA fraud cases we have seen in the county." Once the new board started digging, the whole thing unraveled. We are building a case now. It turned out Brenda's reign of terror was not just about control, it was about distraction. She had been targeting people like me, people who might ask questions or pay too close attention, to keep everyone focused on petty violations instead of the missing money. The investigation took months. The HOA hired a forensic accountant who traced every missing dollar. Brenda had used the money to fund a lifestyle she could not afford on her actual income. Luxury vacations, a new car, home renovations. She had gotten sloppy toward the end, which was probably why she had become even more aggressive with the violations. She needed to maintain her position to keep the scheme going. In October, Brenda Patterson was arrested and charged with fraud, embezzlement, and theft. The local news covered it, showing footage of her being led out of her house in handcuffs, her face twisted in rage and denial. The HOA filed a civil lawsuit to recover the funds. Brenda's assets were seized, including her house. She eventually pleaded guilty to avoid a longer trial and was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution. The community slowly healed. The new board used some of the recovered funds to make actual improvements like better landscaping, a renovated pool, and updated playground equipment. They dropped the overly aggressive enforcement policies and focused on things that actually mattered. I kept driving my truck, kept building my business. I even hired another driver and bought a second truck, which I parked in a commercial lot because my driveway was not big enough for 2. My business grew. I started making enough money to really feel secure, to think about the future. One evening in December, almost a year after the first fine had appeared on my door, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when Tom walked over with a 6-pack of beer. "Figured you could use one of these." I took a bottle and clinked it against his. "What is the occasion?" The HOA just closed the books on the Brenda situation. All the money is recovered, the legal fees are paid, and we actually have a surplus in the budget for the first time in 5 years. That is great news. It is. And I wanted to say thank you. If you had not fought back, if you had just paid that fine and moved your truck, none of this would have come out. She would still be stealing, still be terrorizing people. I took a long drink of my beer. I just wanted to park my truck in my driveway. Tom laughed. Yeah, but you did not back down. You stood up to her when a lot of people would have just rolled over. That took guts. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to deep blue. The desert air was cool and crisp, perfect weather for Phoenix in December. You ever think about running for the board? Tom asked. Hell no, I am gone too much. I would be a terrible board member. Fair enough. But if you ever change your mind, you would have my vote. After Tom left, I sat there a while longer, thinking about the past year. It had been stressful, infuriating, exhausting. But it had also been worth it. I had learned that sometimes you have to fight for what is right, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. I had learned that community matters, that standing together makes you stronger. And I had learned that nobody, not even a power-hungry HOA president, could take away what I had built through hard work and determination. My truck sat in the driveway, ready for the next load, the next journey. It was more than just a vehicle. It was my freedom, my independence, my proof that I could make it on my own terms. The following spring, I was invited to speak at a state legislature hearing about HOA reform. My case, along with others like it, had sparked a conversation about the need for more oversight and protection for homeowners. I drove to the Capitol building in my truck, parking it right out front where everyone could see it. I testified about what had happened, about the fines and the lien and the harassment. I talked about the importance of protecting people's livelihoods, about the need for transparency and accountability in HOA governance. Several legislators asked questions, genuinely interested in understanding the issue. A few months later, a new law passed. It strengthened the protections for commercial vehicles used as primary income sources. It required HOAs to provide better notice and appeals processes. It increased penalties for financial fraud by board members. It was not perfect, but it was progress. I framed a copy of the law and hung it in my home office, right next to my CDL and my DOT permits. Reminders of what I had fought for, what I had won. Life settled into a good rhythm. I took loads across the country, seeing new places, meeting new people, doing the work I loved. When I was home, I enjoyed the quiet of my house, the friendship of my neighbors, the knowledge that my truck was exactly where it belonged. Tom got remarried that summer to a woman named Patricia who worked as a school nurse. I went to the wedding, one of the few times I wore a suit. During the reception, Tom pulled me aside. You know, you inspired me. Watching you fight back against Brenda, it reminded me that sometimes you have to stand up for what is right, even when it is hard. That is part of what gave me the courage to ask Patricia out. I had been alone for so long, I forgot what it felt like to take a chance. I raised my glass to him. Here is to taking chances. To taking chances. That fall, the neighborhood held its first community barbecue under the new board's leadership. It was voluntary, no pressure, just a chance for people to get together and enjoy each other's company. I made sure to be home for it. The turnout was impressive. Families with kids, retirees, young couples, everyone mixing and mingling in the community center's backyard area. Gloria manned the grill with expert precision. Jake and Maria organized games for the kids. Tom and Patricia made sure everyone had drinks. I stood off to the side for a bit, just watching. This was what a community was supposed to be. Not rules and fines and power trips, but people looking out for each other, supporting each other, being neighborly. A young woman approached me, maybe late 20s, holding a plate of food. You are Ethan, right? The truck driver. That is me. I am Amy. My husband and I just bought a house on Cactus Lane. I wanted to thank you. We almost did not buy here because of all the horror stories about the old HOA board. But when we heard what happened, how you fought back and helped clean things up, we felt better about it. We love the neighborhood now. I am glad it worked out. Can I ask you something? How did you keep going? I mean, when it felt like everyone was against you, how did you not just give up? I thought about that for a moment. I guess I realized that if I gave up, they won, not just against me, but against everyone who might come after me. Someone had to draw a line. It just happened to be me. Amy nodded thoughtfully. That is really brave. I do not know about brave. Stubborn, maybe. She laughed and moved on to talk to other people. I grabbed a burger from Gloria and found a seat at one of the picnic tables. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Music played from a speaker somewhere, something classic and familiar. This was home. Not just the house, but this place, these people, this feeling of belonging. As the evening wore on and the sky darkened, someone started a fire in the community fire pit. People gathered around it, telling stories, roasting marshmallows, enjoying the cool evening air. I found myself sitting between Tom and Gloria, listening to their banter, occasionally chiming in with a comment or a joke. You know, Gloria said, poking at the fire with a stick. I never thought I would say this, but I am grateful for what happened with Brenda. Not the stealing or the harassment, obviously, but the way it brought us all together. Before all this, I barely knew my neighbors. Now I feel like I have a real community. That is because you do, Tom said. We all do, and we have Ethan to thank for starting it. I did not do it alone. No, but you started it. You threw the first punch. I smiled at that. I guess I did. Later that night, after the barbecue wound down and everyone headed home, I walked back to my house. My truck was parked in the driveway, exactly where it should be. I patted the hood as I passed it, a gesture of affection for the machine that had given me so much. Inside, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat on my back patio, looking up at the stars. The desert sky was clear and vast, full of possibilities. My phone buzzed. A text from my dispatcher. Big load coming up, Denver to Miami, premium pay. 3,000 miles, probably 5 days. Was I interested? I typed back. Absolutely. When do I leave? Tomorrow morning. I confirmed and set my phone down. Tomorrow I would be back on the road, back to the rhythm of highways and truck stops and loading docks. But tonight I was home. And home felt good. The next morning I loaded up my truck, did my pre-trip inspection, and pulled out of my driveway just as the sun was rising. A few neighbors were out, heading to work or walking their dogs. A couple of them waved. I waved back. The drive to Denver was long but familiar. I had run this route dozens of times. The landscape changed from desert to mountains, the air growing cooler as I climbed in elevation. I stopped at a truck stop outside Flagstaff for fuel and a quick meal, chatting with other drivers about routes and weather and the general state of the industry. Being back on the road felt right. This was my element, my zone. The truck hummed beneath me, the miles rolling past, the world flowing by outside my windows. There was a freedom in it, a simplicity that I craved. The load in Denver was automotive parts, pallets of transmissions and alternators headed to a distribution center in Miami. The warehouse crew loaded me up efficiently, and I was back on the road by evening, heading east across the plains. Somewhere in Kansas, late at night, I pulled into a rest area to sleep. I climbed into the sleeper berth, set my alarm, and lay there in the darkness, listening to the occasional whoosh of other trucks passing on the interstate. I thought about the past year and a half. Everything that had happened, all the stress and conflict and eventual victory. It felt surreal now, like a story that had happened to someone else. But the proof was in my wallet, in the absence of fines and liens, in the freedom to park my truck wherever I wanted. I thought about Brenda, sitting in prison, her life ruined by her own greed and need for control. I did not feel sorry for her. She had made her choices and she was paying for them. But I did feel a kind of satisfaction knowing that justice had been served. Mostly, though, I felt grateful. Grateful that I had not backed down, that I had fought for what was right, that I had found allies in my neighbors. Grateful for Tom and Gloria and all the others who had stood with me. Grateful for Marcus and his legal expertise. Grateful for Judge Martinez and her no-nonsense approach to justice. And grateful for this truck, this life, this career that I had built from nothing. I fell asleep to the gentle rocking of the truck as other vehicles passed, dreaming of open roads and endless horizons. The drive to Miami took 3 days, straight through with minimal stops. I delivered the load on time, collected my paperwork, and immediately got dispatched for a return load to Phoenix. The trucking life never stopped. By the time I pulled back into my driveway a week after I had left, I was exhausted but content. The house was exactly as I had left it. My mailbox had a few bills and some junk mail, nothing urgent. I unloaded my gear, showered, and collapsed into bed, sleeping for 12 straight hours. When I woke up, it was late afternoon. My phone had several texts, one from Tom inviting me to a barbecue at his place that weekend. One from Gloria asking if I could help her move some furniture. One from my dispatcher with another load offer. I responded to all of them, agreeing to help Gloria, confirming for Tom's barbecue, and taking the load for the following week. This was my life now. Work and community, road and home, solitude and friendship. It was a good balance. That weekend at Tom's barbecue, I met more neighbors, people I had never really talked to before. Word had spread about what had happened with the HOA, and I found myself retelling the story several times. Each time, people seemed amazed that it had all worked out, that the bad guy had actually faced consequences. "You do not hear stories like that very often," one guy said. "Usually the HOA just wins and the homeowner gets screwed." "Not this time," I said. "Good for you, man. Seriously." The months rolled on. Fall turned to winter, winter to spring. My business continued to grow. I hired a second driver to run my second truck, a young guy named Danny who reminded me of myself a decade ago. Hungry, hardworking, eager to prove himself. The HOA continued to function smoothly under the new board. No more harassment, no more petty fines, no more power trips. Just a functional organization that maintained common areas and organized occasional community events. I kept in touch with Marcus, who had moved on to other cases but still checked in occasionally to see how things were going. He told me my case had become something of a legend in local legal circles, a David versus Goliath story that people loved to reference. "You have no idea how many people are fighting similar battles," he said during one of our catch-up calls. "Your case gave them hope. It showed that you can fight back and win." One day in late spring, almost 2 years after that first fine appeared on my door, I was home between loads when someone knocked. I opened the door to find a young couple, both in their late 20s, looking nervous. "Are you Ethan Wagner?" the woman asked. "I am." "We are so sorry to bother you. My name is Jennifer and this is my husband Mark. We just moved into a neighborhood in Temp and we are having a problem with our HOA. They are trying to fine us for parking Mark's work van in our driveway. Someone told us about what happened to you, and we were hoping maybe you could give us some advice." I invited them in, made coffee, and spent the next hour telling them everything I had learned. I gave them Marcus's contact information, walked them through the statute that had protected me, and encouraged them not to give up. "The most important thing is to document everything," I said. "Every notice, every communication, every fine. Build your case like you are going to court, because you might have to." They left looking more confident, armed with information and a plan. I watched them drive away and felt a sense of purpose beyond just driving my truck. Maybe this was part of my legacy, helping others navigate the same challenges I had faced. Over the next year, I heard from several more people in similar situations. Word had spread somehow, through social media or local news coverage, or just the general grapevine. I became an accidental advocate for homeowners dealing with overreaching HOAs. I did not mind. It felt good to help, to use my experience for something positive. I started keeping a file of resources, legal statutes, contact information for lawyers who specialized in HOA law. I even gave a talk at a local library about homeowners' rights, which was attended by about 50 people. Life had a way of taking unexpected turns. 2 years ago, I was just a truck driver trying to park my vehicle at my house. Now I was somehow a local advocate for homeowners' rights, all while still running my trucking business. My company continued to expand. I added a third truck, then a fourth. I hired more drivers, good people who took pride in their work. I moved from being an owner-operator to running a small fleet. It was more management than I had ever planned to do, but it felt right. The neighborhood continued to thrive. The new board implemented several quality-of-life improvements. Crime stayed low. Property values increased. It became a genuinely nice place to live, the kind of community people wanted to be part of. Tom and Patricia had a baby, a little girl named Emma. Gloria started a neighborhood book club that met monthly. Jake and Maria renovated their house and started a small landscaping business. Life moved forward in all the normal, beautiful ways. And through it all, my truck sat in my driveway whenever I was home, a symbol of hard work and perseverance, and the fundamental right to earn a living. 3 years after that first fine, on a quiet evening in May, I was sitting on my porch when a car pulled up. A woman got out, professional-looking, carrying a briefcase. For a moment my old anxiety spiked, wondering if this was some new HOA issue. But she smiled as she approached, and I relaxed. "Mr. Wagner, I am Sarah Chen from the Arizona Homeowners Rights Coalition. I was hoping I could talk to you for a few minutes." I gestured to the empty chair next to me. "Sure, have a seat." She sat down and pulled out a folder. "I have been following your case for a while now. What you did, fighting back against your HOA and uncovering that fraud, it really made waves. We have used your case as an example in several advocacy campaigns. I am glad it helped. More than helped. It inspired real change. The law that passed last year, the one strengthening protections for commercial vehicles and requiring better HOA oversight, that does not happen without cases like yours drawing attention to the problem. I had not really thought about it that way. I was just trying to park my truck. And in doing so, you made things better for thousands of other people. That matters." She went on to explain that the coalition was working on additional reforms, pushing for more transparency requirements and stronger penalties for HOA board misconduct. They wanted to use my story with my permission in their upcoming campaign. I agreed. Why not? If my experience could help prevent others from going through the same nightmare, it was worth it. After Sarah left, I sat there watching the sun set, thinking about how strange life was. You never knew when a seemingly simple act of standing up for yourself would ripple outward, creating change beyond what you could imagine. My phone rang. It was Danny, my driver, calling from somewhere in Nevada. "Hey boss, just wanted to let you know I delivered the load early." The customer was really happy. "Good work, Danny. Head home and take a couple days off. You have earned it." "Thanks, boss. Hey, I have been meaning to ask, is it true what they say about you and the HOA thing?" "Depends on what they say." "That you fought them and won and they ended up going to prison for stealing money." "The president did, yeah. It is a long story." "Man, that is wild. Anyway, I will see you next week." I hung up and smiled. My story had become legend, at least in certain circles. The truth was both more mundane and more dramatic than the legend, as truth often is. As darkness settled over the neighborhood, lights began flickering on in houses. Families having dinner, kids doing homework, people living their lives. Normal, everyday, beautiful life. My truck sat silent in the driveway, waiting for the next journey. Tomorrow I would be heading out again, another load, another adventure. But tonight I was home, and home was exactly where I wanted to be. The battle with the HOA felt like ancient history now, a story from another lifetime. But the lessons remained. Stand up for what is right. Do not let bullies win. Document everything. Find allies. Be persistent. Justice might be slow, but it is worth fighting for. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you cannot park your own truck in your own driveway.